Excellent. Yeah, people are trickling in. Good, good. All right, so are we recording, Kim? It looks like we are. Woohoo. Okay. So tell you what, why don't I propose that we just kind of get started and people who are jumping in can jump in. But I've got to I've got to leave in a couple minutes because I'm supposed to be giving a presentation elsewhere. I'm logging in for that. So are you good with me starting, Kim?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, go for it. That's what I heard. Oh, and Ryan, welcome. All right. So, welcome everybody. If you go click on the link for the notes for today, I tried to write down ahead of time what I was going to talk about. So hopefully and if what we end up talking with isn't consistent with the notes, we'll just fix the notes. So I want to talk real quick about Ubi Keys, or more generally multi-factor authentication tokens. It's been noted for by a number of folks, hey, we really need to get more token use out there. Um, passwords have problems. So hot off the press, I just learned recently that OpenSSF's been offered a number of Ubi Keys. Um, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the exact number, but it's thousands. So I think that we need to start working out some things. I think the main things we need to work out are things like, who do we distribute keys to? How do we distribute them? Particularly, we want to give people confidence that we haven't subverted them. And I think one of the biggest key points, pun not intended, is providing super easy to apply guidelines, tutorials, best practices for using them in common uses for OS. I'm gonna have to say for OSS. So for example, committing to GitHub, committing to GitLab, doing a package release. Um, and using various platforms. If you use Fedora, if you use Ubuntu, if you use Mac OS, if you use Windows. Um, so this is kind of hot off the press. I'm proposing working this as a task with the lead as the best practices working group, because they're the people who are going to have to work up the guidelines. But really, this is something that crosses multiple working groups. Clearly, MFAs are related are relevant for digital identity attestation, right? I think we can all agree on that. And we're also going to need to work with the critical projects working group, because I think at least some of those keys that we distribute to are going to be towards some of the most critical projects. So I don't know, now that's a proposal. I don't really care which working group leads, as long as we identify a home for it and keep and start moving. Um, I just found out about this, and I'm also been trying to simultaneously prep for a workshop. So um, I guess what I'm suggesting is, why don't we start by emailing me, and you know I don't know what the best next steps are. Maybe doing a Google Doc and trying to create a plan, and what needs to be done in what order, and then start executing it. Um, so maybe create a Google Doc for a plan, assign parts, start executing. Um, Comments.
Has anything like this been done before? Have you seen? I know we have we on Google side have a bunch of keys to give out. I think we're part of this too. I'm just curious. Like, I was just thinking about the not subverted piece. Is that basically sort of a trust thing for the distributor, or?
Right. Yeah. How do we distribute them in a way that we aren't contributing to the problem, as it were? I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't done that research. If somebody, frankly, of all the groups, this would be the right group to know the answer to that question. It's a great question.
Well, it sounds like we have some work to do.
So
yeah, at KubeCon, I was thinking we would just tape some to chairs and be like Oprah style, and you get a key and you get a key. But if we have to put a little bit more.
I do know that somebody else whose name is I'm completely drawing a blank on, so my apologies. Basically said he had done this by having little sessions, little conference sessions. Hey, show up, you'll get a free key, and and we'll tell you how to use it. Um, so let's see here. I think it was John Nolte specifically mentioned they
Oh,
had some past experience doing this. This is kind of hot off the presses. If it seems like we're not organized, it's because, in fact, right now we're in the process of getting organized. So, and I would frankly be happy to hand. I mean, I'm mentioning this mainly because I'm excited about it, but I don't. It doesn't have to be me leading this. Somebody else wants to take the lead. That's awesome. I think, and John Nolte has certainly expressed an interest. So, you know, basically, I think right now we're just trying to find out who's interested. We need to work. Get together, work out a plan, work out who's going to do what parts of that plan, and get something happening. Okay. So
yeah.
really early, we don't know a lot yet. Please help us learn what we need to learn.
If we start that, Doc, just link it back in the notes, or I'll try to do it. Maybe Jeff wants to lead.
Well, you know what? It turns out that I have great cosmic powers. I can create a blank Google Docs.
Amazing.
Let's see, the great MFA distribution plan. All right. So let's see here. We'll just share. All right. So I will create a link that anyone with link can view it. I will put that link in the meeting notes. If you're interested in actually making, contributing content, let me know. We'll add you to, just click on it and say, hey, let me edit, and I'll, I'll say yes.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, and sorry, it's actually I shouldn't be sorry for the beginning. We're beginning something. Let's go for it.
Have fun with the NIST panel.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'll be honest, I really have no idea how this is going to work what's going to be the result long term, but I guess we find out.
That was a good tee up for a keyless demo next. Who needs keys, right, Matt?
All right, take care, everybody. I'm sorry I've got to run off.
Yeah, David.
Yep.
Just quickly before Matt starts, does anyone else have anything they want to discuss today, or want to intro yourself? No. All right, it's all you, Matt.
All right. Hi, I'm Matt. I've been bouncing around the container tool space for a while. I used to be at Google, which is how I know Kim. I started projects like Google's container registry, as well as some things like container analysis and Knative and a bunch of other projects while I was there. I can't really talk about what I'm doing yet, but I'm here today to demo some stuff I've been doing within the SigStore cosign project, integrating with some other things. I'm somewhat immersed in that world. So if I say some stuff that doesn't have, the folks don't have context on, I'm happy to try and explain that stuff as best I can, and we can sort of build on it. So a little bit of background on sort of cosign. Cosign is a tool that lets you sort of use OCI storage to sign artifacts in OCI storage using keys that you would provide either locally or through a KMS system. There's sort of a new, well, I don't know how new it is, but there's what's currently dubbed an experimental flow through this, where you don't necessarily provide keys locally or through a KMS system, but you use this ephemeral key process where keys are provisioned and basically rooted with a sort of CA-like construct with another SigStore project called FullCO. If you were to sign something locally yourself, actually, I can demo that if folks haven't seen it, since it's super duper cool. So let me share my screen, and I'll demo that first, and then I'll demo some of the other stuff that that I was going to demo. So let's see. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. I've got command line prompt here. Okay, so let's see. So I'll talk about my setup a little bit, and then I'll do sort of the me signing it flow to show you that in case you haven't seen it, because I think it's super cool. And then I'll show you some of the other things and give you some context on those things. So basically my setup here is I have a Kubernetes cluster here that you can see on the right. It's a little watch. The components that are installed on this cluster, so the GKE cluster has GKE workload identity enabled, which is something where each sort of service account within the cluster can impersonate a GCP service account and give you short-lived credentials for that service account when you request it. So it's ephemeral credentials, which is nice for a variety of reasons that I'm guessing that y'all are familiar with. And so we'll use that for sort of the next part of my demo. But first, in case folks haven't seen it, so to enable this keyless flow, hold on, experimental flow through Cosign, you hopefully I have a good version of Cosign installed. You need to pass this environment variable right now. That's partly because the full CO and the recore transparency log stuff is not sort of generally available v1, production ready, whatever you want to call it, quite yet. And so yeah, so you have to enable it through this environment variable right now. But basically the way it works is you say Cosign experimental true, and that will light up this keyless functionality, where instead of, if I weren't doing that, I could say -key and give it my signing key, or I could give it sort of a URI-ish thing that points at a KMS system, and there's a whole bunch of KMS systems that integrate with it. But so if I go through this flow, and hopefully all of the things that I'm about to do will show up on your screen. So if I hit enter, okay, you should see a little thing that says, hey, 3LO, log in with one of these providers. I like to do my Gmail one. And so, okay, the 3LO has been successful. And if I switch back over to here, it says, okay, this is not a public image. So it asks me whether I want to publish it to the transparency log. And I say, yes, sure. Nothing special. I'm just using GCR, right? So basically what this did was this generated a key in memory. It was never saved to disk. It basically contacted FullCO and went through a challenge where FullCO sent me through this 3LO to prove who I am, and then basically blessed this certificate that I signed it with, and infused my email address that it got through the 3LO into the signed payload. So that's the keyless flow, which I think is super cool. It roots it at the full COCA. And so if I were to go in here now and I were to say cosign verify, I don't necessarily need the key in order to do it. And you can see down here, right, like my email address is associated with this thing. There's a bunch of other signatures because I've been demoing this a bunch, but you can see that like my identity is tied to the thing that the signature that's associated with this artifact, and that signature is rooted at the full COCA and whatnot. So you can start to do things like authorization and policy around whose signatures matter and stuff like that. Now that you have sort of a stronger sense of the identities signing these things. So okay, so for the next part of the demo, what I wanted to show was that same sort of keyless signing flow, but in the context of sort of automation. And so for this demo, we're going to use Tecton. So I've got a Tecton task here. Can everyone see the VS Code?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so I have two versions of this, one that shows sort of what you had to do before, and what the other is going to show sort of what you can do now with some of the changes that have landed in the release of Cosine that's hot off the presses yesterday, 1.2. So basically, to walk you through this task, this Tecton task basically says, I take a parameter that's the digest assign, I built this image with a tool called KO. It's not super relevant to this, but one of the things I had to do with this, and the reason I'm not using sort of a pre-built cosine image is I had to sort of layer cosine on top of a G-Cloud image so that I could set up all of the sort of identity token stuff to access that GKE workload identity and do things like get credentials to publish things to GCR. So you can see here that I'm enabling the cosine experimental like I did on the command line. And then I have this sort of gross looking shell script that I'm using inside that image where I set up Docker auth. I generate an identity token, and then I pass it to cosine. So the key thing here, right, is cosine sign. And then instead of going through that 3LO like I did locally, I pass dash identity token and then an identity token that I got from G-Cloud. And so let's see that in action. So I have, and so the other bit at the bottom, I had a service account. So this, I've sort of removed the Conoco bits from it, building a Docker file and whatnot to just have the signing parts of it. But my service account is still the Conoco one because I was a little lazy. So we're going to run this task, sign with G-Cloud as Conoco, and I'm going to pass in the digest of an image. I think it's the same digest that we just did, but so we'll see what happens. So you can see the pod starting to spin up over here right away, and then it's going to stream the output here. You can see at the top, G-Cloud talking about registering a whole bunch of Docker credentials for all the GCR URLs, and then it pushes the signature to GCR here at the bottom. Right, so it works, but it's kind of verbose. You have to like have a non-portable version of this cosine image that only works with Google, as well as manually extracting the identity token and some of this other stuff. So one of the things that we've been working on is sort of streamlining that a bit. So switching over to a new version of this task. I'll walk through this again. So the top bit is the same other than the name, sign with ambient. The goal up here is actually pretty close to what we're going to walk through. The main difference is it drops the cosine experimental. So I have an image here. This, again, is not quite the cosine image that was released. So there were two reasons we were using G-Cloud in the previous thing. One was for the Docker registry credentials, and the other was for the identity token aspects, right? So, this one basically is a CI image from Cosine, because I started to put this demo together before the 1.2 release was out. But this has the elements that we need. And I'm using something called Docker Credential Magician, which is something that it basically, Docker Credential Magic tries to be a sort of universal credential helper. And what it does is it bundles in credential helpers for things like ECR and Azure CR and GCR into the image and sets up the Docker configuration within the image to use those. So what we have here is a version of Cosine with a sort of portable set of credential helpers available to it so that it can write those, so it can read images and it can write the signatures to a container registry. And this is the one bit that's sort of not that ideal flow at the top, but really all we need now is sign, and then -f and -upload, right? So the -f basically says, don't prompt me about, I know I'm publishing a I'm publishing a private image, but like write the signature to the transparency log anyways. These are just the flags I chose to sort of avoid some of those prompts. But and we're just telling this basically what I wrote on the command line, sign-f upload digest, except this doesn't have to go through the 3LO, right? Because that ambient, the sort of in the context of GKE workload identity, as well as some other systems, you have the ability to sort of get an OIDC token, and Cosign in the latest release is aware of those things and can sort of be sensitive to it and take advantage of that, so that if you are in one of those environments, you don't actually need to do the identity token plumbing anymore. It sort of just works. And so let's do that one. I'll just change gcloud to ambient, and the output will look really similar because it's still Cosign, but what we won't have is that gcloud output at the top about credential helpers, and we get our signature. And so what I don't know if we'll be able to see it given the sort of enormity of let's see, verify. So let me try and show you that verify again. So we saw my email down here. Well, it's at the bottom is now the workload's identity, right? So before the bottom signature was my email address at Gmail, at gmail.com. Now it actually, the one at the bottom, mine's still in here somewhere. It's right here. But you can see down here at the bottom, the GCP service account that my Kubernetes service account is impersonating is Conoco workload at myprojectid.im.gserviceaccount.com, right? So now I can start to reason about the identity of sort of who is signing these things as they are produced by workloads, and we're making it easier and easier to do these things so that folks have to jump through fewer hoops in order to start signing things with things. So a couple of the other things I'll mention in this sort of category is we're trying to also get common sort of base images and stuff to start to do this. So one of the things that we did was we got the distroless images, which are pretty popular in this space, to start signing with these. So actually, let's try and capture this output too, and we'll look for the email. So you can see here, we started signing this. It might have been earlier this week with a service account that's keyless at the distroless. Distroless is the project ID.im.gserviceaccount.com, right? So last week, if you had tried this before we were signing this, the images were signed, but they were not signed by the full CO root, so you would have to pass in the public key. Now, leveraging the sort of full COCA, you can verify them, and you can get sort of the identity of the entity that signed it. So in this case, we are using a service account called keyless within the distroless project, which is the same project that these things are being published into on GCR. And you can now start to, at least verify the signature bits and the identity of the thing signing those things. Obviously beyond this, we start to talk about attestations and stuff like that. But personally, I'm really excited about making it really easy for folks to sign things, both with their own identity as well as, the identity of workloads. The other bit, and I'm going to say this because he said I could say it yesterday, but this is still sort of quiet, so don't go tweet about it. So there's integrations right now with GKE workload identity, and GCP has a sort of different impersonation flow that works for Google. But a feature has been dark launched to GitHub Actions to support identity tokens within those flows. And so if you know the sort of currently undocumented secret handshake, you can actually do this exact same thing in the context of GitHub Actions today, with cosign just saying cosign experimental true, cosign sign, image digest, and assuming that you have enabled the sort of identity token stuff, as well as the ability to write to presumably GHCR, you can publish signatures as your GitHub Action workflow to, alongside your images. And so I'm really excited about getting more and more folks to start signing things. And so, I'm excited about this being easier. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm happy to answer questions about sort of aspects of this. And I know I'm talking fast and I tend to talk a lot. So I'm gonna.
I had one question, and I think this has probably been discussed, but I don't remember the answer. Is like when you did the distro list demo and I saw the service account, identity that signed it, like how would someone know to trust that? Like, is that being stored in the, you just look at the public keys being stored like in the repo, and then you sort of know that's what you expect when you're doing the
I don't know that anyone has ever seen a public or a key for that image ever. So basically, the way that works is, okay, so that service account was created. I don't know that it actually has any credentials on the project itself. It is just sort of an identity that we sign things as. We have given the identity of the Google Cloud Build service account that the builds run as for that project permissions to impersonate this identity, and so that is how it sort of signs things as that identity as part of the flow. And so it basically gets an identity token saying, I'm going to act as this thing in my interaction with Fulcio. It generates keys in memory. Fulcio gets the identity token and goes through a challenge flow with Google to say, is this identity token really this key list thing? And Google's like, yep. And then Fulcio basically blesses the ephemeral certificate that the cosign process in Google Cloud Build went through. And then it uses the key to sign the image and publishes that signature into GCR. So nobody, as far as I know, has ever downloaded a key for that service account. And exactly one thing, as far as I know, I left Google a little while ago, so I can't go like snoop around the project anymore. But in principle, exactly one thing can impersonate that service account, which itself has 0 credentials. So it basically is an identity that Google Cloud Build can impersonate, and only Google Cloud Build can impersonate. So we're dual signing it right now. So there is also a public key in the repo that is being used with a private key that's in the KMS system that is signing those images as well. And so if you go and you look at that public key, you can verify with that public key. But the nice thing is with Fulcio, you are doing this all basically based on ephemeral credentials and a CA-like flow. So as long as you sort of trust trust your CA root, right? You can in these workflows you can point things at a different Fulcio root if you don't want to trust the sort of public thing. But Fulcio is only signing things that have gone through a challenge. I really like the analogy of doing for signing what Let's Encrypt does for TLS, because there's a challenge process, right? And so just like you'd have an HTTP 01 or a DNS 01 challenge to get a certificate for Let's Encrypt, we have sort of an identity challenge that is happening with the 3LO, and it's me, or the OIDC token for the other flow that sort of makes the certificate process work. And so I'm really excited about it, but I think the Let's Encrypt analogy really resonates with me. But yeah.
Cool. Any other questions for Matt?
And Matt, I'm super excited to hear about the Google Actions. I'm sorry, GitHub Actions potential support coming soon. I know it's like kind of quiet right now. Do you have an idea about how long it'll be before we see that?
Yeah, so I also don't work for GitHub, and so I've been sort of trying to not be too public about this or rock the boat, because they were nice enough to, let me play with it very, very, very early, and as well as make changes to make this possible. They've been awesome, and they definitely were critical in making this possible. In terms of time frame, I believe that they are planning to start to talk about this more publicly in the next few weeks, but I don't have a specific timeline. The main thing, I think, is not talking about it publicly. I can probably share some details with you privately if you want to try it out. Just don't, scream it from rooftops, or, tweet it or TikTok it or whatever your social media of choice is, until, they start to talk about it publicly. But I'm super excited about it. I'm a big fan of Actions. I use it for a lot of stuff. So they totally nerd sniped me. I don't mind at all, because this is awesome. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And in terms of reaching me, well, my email's in the recording now, but I'm Matt Moore on many Slacks. I'm in CNCF, Knative, Sigstore, Taxon, Zoogler. Yeah, you can find me on, one of those, or email me. All right.
Very cool. All right. Any others? Doesn't look like it. Well, thank you, Matt. This was great.
Yeah, no problem.
John, I think you were the name that was mentioned earlier about Ubi Key distribution. And I think David Wheeler just assigned you all the action items. John Notley. So we did create a blank doc in our working group meeting notes, and sort of hoping to rally some folks around figuring out how to give away a bunch of Ubi keys. So just in case you missed that memo.
No, I saw the agenda item. I just couldn't attend earlier, so I jumped on. But yeah, I'm John Nolte. Let me identify and attest who I am. And I'm a big fan of like giving Ubi keys to like the upstream open source community. So I was super excited to hear the news that OpenSSF had these Ubi keys and was planning like this distribution of them. So yeah, I'm glad to be in touch with David, and there's a bunch of other people. The doc that he sent, the great MFA distribution plan, is starting to be like the brainstorm central doc for ideas and collecting the thoughts, because but yeah, that's there. And then there's a few random like email threads I've seen. But yeah. And I'm also on the OpenSSF Slack channel. So I don't know if you all are there, but there's also a channel there that David created. I can update the agenda item with that Slack channel too. If you guys want.
All right, we just need to get to work then, figure it out. Awesome. All right, if there's nothing else, you guys can have some time back. Cool. All right, see you, everyone.
Thank you.